All right, welcome back to Growth Track. We're on session 2 of Outreach and Evangelism, and I'm Chris Miller, and so we will get right into it. Our first session, we talked about the first 2 components of evangelism, that it must be fueled by love, motivated by love, and number 2, that we need to be authentic. Before we get into the next 4, which is what I'm hoping to cover this time, I'm going to talk a little bit less maybe about things, but I want to go over an equation. So if you guys will write down on your piece of paper, it's going to look kind of like a algebra or something, but HP plus CP plus CC equals MI, okay? This is a formula for impacting our world, okay? I'm going to tell you what each one of them stand for, and we kind of just talked about the first one, but let's start with let's go backwards. So the MI, what we're trying to get is maximum impact, okay? We want our lives to have maximum impact. So how do we do that? So let's start with the HP. It's high potency. We just talked about that we have to have the disease before we can give it. We have to be full of love. We have to be full of Jesus. We have to be connected to Him. So high potency plus the CP is close proximity. We got to be close to people. We got to have it start, and we're going to talk about this next. We got to be in relationships with people. And then the next one plus CC. The CC is clear communication. That equals maximum impact. Okay, so high potency, we have to be really a contagious Christian. We have to be close to people. We have to be able to communicate clearly the gospel, which we'll talk about that in sessions 5 and 6, to have maximum impact. And you can see how all of these work together to get maximum impact, because if we don't have high potency, but we're close to a bunch of people, but we don't have a lot of Jesus, we're not going to change a lot of lives. Or if we're, let's say, and this is even more heartbreaking to me, when I see people that are a lot of HP, high potency, like these are awesome, amazing, solid Christians, but they have no close proximity to anyone. They just come to church, they're by themselves. That's not going to get maximum impact either, you know. And let's say you do both. You're high potency, plus you have close proximity, you're around people, you have relationship, but you don't know how to present the gospel. You don't know how, you get all messed up. Then you got friends with people, and they see that you're awesome and stuff, but maybe they never take that step in faith. So to have maximum impact, we want all of them. So that's really what this whole course is about. So what we've really talked about already is the HP, the high potency. We got to have the disease first. So one of the things I encourage you guys to do is start praying that God does help you see people the way that He does, and spend more time with Him, stick close with Him, and that'll do that. Then our next one, close proximity. That goes along with some of the next ones that we're going to talk about. So number 3, we're back to our components of evangelism. Number 3 component is it's built on relationships, okay? Friends listen to friends. They confide in friends. You know, they let friends influence them. When we have a problem or we're making an important decision, we naturally turn to those that we know and we trust, okay? So if we want to help others in their spiritual journeys, we need to develop real trusting relationships with them. It's important that these friendships be no strings attached, meaning that we're going to still love and care for them no matter if they agree with us or don't agree with us. And you know, that's where I was with Rock Youth. There were a lot of those kids that never got saved. They never agreed with me, but there were no strings attached. I just loved them because Jesus loved them. It didn't matter to me. Like, I wanted them to accept Him, but there were no strings attached. You know, we can't have people as a project that we're trying to get them saved and, you know, and have strings attached to it. We just need to love people and build relationships. So if we're going to impact our world for Christ, the most effective approach is going to be through friendships. Okay, we'll have to get close to them so that they can see that we genuinely care and that we have their best interest in mind. To share the gospel, we must share our lives, okay? 1 Thessalonians 2:8 says, "We loved you so much that we shared with you not only God's good news, but our own lives too." That's what we have to do. We have to share our own lives. Okay, so we've talked about this equation. That's exactly what we need as Christians if we're going to influence people. We have to have high potency, okay? Which means we have strong enough concentration of Christ's influence in our lives that His power and presence is undeniable to people. And you know, we probably have all been around people that you can just tell this person has been with Jesus. Like, it's undeniable, okay? So, and we have to have close proximity. We need to get close to people that we're hoping to reach in order to allow His power to have its intended effect, okay? So does this equation that we went over accurately describe the current condition of your own life? You know, God gave us this equation. This is exactly how Jesus did it. You know, this is exactly how he did it. No other math will equal maximum impact. It's high potency plus low proximity. We said that. You can't stay away from people that we're called to reach. We can't have low proximity. Or low potency and high proximity, that won't work. It's important that we communicate, okay? So we need, and one thing I would just challenge you to do, if you look at this equation, let it be something that, because this is what growth track is all about, is growing. So I would look at that and say, God, which one of these do I need more growth in? Do I need more in being close to you? Do I need more in the first one? Or am I pretty to myself and I don't have very many relationships? Do you want to stretch me in that area where I have more relationships with people? Or maybe I'm not very good. I love people and I love to be around people, but I'm not good at presenting the gospel. Maybe that's the one. So one of the things that you can do is look at this equation and ask God, like, which one of these can I really work on? All right, so number four component is this expressed in both actions and words, okay? There is a quote by St. Francis that says, preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. I like this quote, but I want to say this. We have to use words too. I love the point of it is that our lives should just scream Jesus. People should be able to see us without me saying a word. People should be able to know Chris Miller loves Jesus. I can tell by the way she treats people. I can tell by the way she forgives people. But if I want to see people cross that line and make a commitment to Christ, I got to use my words too. You know, there's a verse that says, how will the people know if they've never heard? And how will they hear if no one tells them? So it's important that our daily actions need to exhibit God's love. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I agree with that. And 1 John 3:18 says, Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. So our actions are so important. But the Bible also asks this, and how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? Romans 10:14. So God's word adds to what St. Francis was saying by saying that words are necessary. You know, we must do more than just hope our friends notice the difference in our life and get saved and figure it out on their own. You know, we're going to need words. We're going to have to be able to clearly communicate what Jesus has done in my life in your own words. You don't have to be this great evangelist that we've pictured in the past that can present the gospel. We just need to be able to say, this was what my life was like before Jesus. Then Jesus came into my life, and this is what my life is like now. Okay, for them to really get the message, we need to explain it verbally, okay? And we'll be discussing more on that in some of our next sessions. So number 5 is it is a process. This is really important to remember because we're dealing with real people, that it is a process. To be effective, we shouldn't rush a person in their spiritual journey. It may take people a long time. I can tell you that it took me a long time to accept Christ. It wasn't the first time somebody mentioned Jesus to me that I ran to church. In fact, I really was an atheist and hated Christians until I was 21. And it took, actually, all of these things, the couple that led me to Jesus, match every one of these. Like they were awesome at evangelism because their life was their lifestyle. So it's a process. It usually takes time for people to understand the message, trust it, and act on it. Seldom do they hear the gospel for the first time and commit their lives to Jesus. You know, we need to wait patiently to try to bring them along step by step. We see this process in the Bible when Paul says, my job was to plant the seed in your hearts, and Apollos watered it, but it was God, not we, who made it grow. 1 Corinthians 3:6. This is why relationships are so important, okay? So it is a process. We're just going to remember that we're building relationships with people. First, we're like motivated by love. You know, we're going to do that. So it is a process. We're going to give people time. And number 6, the last one, and so I may have time to get to some other stuff. We'll see. It is always a partnership. That's a relief. We don't have to do this on our own. The verse that we just read talked about that one person's job could be to water it, one person plants a seed, another person waters it. God rarely uses just one Christian to bring someone through the entire process. God uses a number of people to help move people toward him. A person coming to Christ is like a chain with many links, you know. I'm so thankful that to all those teenagers that came through our youth group, I got to be one link. A bunch of them, I don't know who else God's sending in their life, you know, but I know that that I did my part. Isn't it encouraging to know that we can be a link in the chain of influences that God's forming in somebody's life? That's awesome. He doesn't usually ask us to carry the full burden of leading friends all the way from beginning to end. Rather, he asks us to do our part and watch for opportunities to partner with other Christians to link up our strengths with theirs in order to lead people to Christ. It is important to remember that God himself is our most important partner and that reaching others was his idea, okay? And here's the truth of the whole thing. Unless the Holy Spirit empowers our efforts and works in those we're trying to reach, nothing's going to happen anyway. We have to be empowered by the Holy Spirit. That's why we must pray consistently, asking God to do his work and to use us as he draws our friends towards faith in Jesus. Okay, I just want to read back really quick over the 6 components. And just like that equation I gave you guys, here's the 2 things I want you guys to think about. In which component are you the strongest, and in which one do you need to improve, okay? Because this is growth track. We want to grow, right? So number 1 was fueled by love. 2 was being authentic. 3 was it's built on relationships. We need relationships. 4 is expressed in both words and actions. Our actions and words both are saying the same thing. 5, it's a process. Like some of us need to be patient with people. You know, there's some people you witness to for a long time and it doesn't look like anything is getting through to them. I would say that I had people in my life that had witnessed to me and they probably thought she's never going to get saved. But you know what? God was using lots of people along the way, and just at the right time, when a couple came in, and they were these 6 things perfectly. But I was a single mom at the time, definitely living in poverty, but was a waitressing at a Pizza Hut in Knox. And this couple kept coming in, and I thought they were so nice. They were a young couple, but they always asked for my table, and they always tipped me $50. I had never been, and always, it was like, you've got to be kidding me. It was like groceries for a week or 2. So whenever I saw them come in, I was very excited. And then they started getting to know me and wanting to know about my kids and inviting me over to their house. At this time, I hated Christians. I thought they all thought they were better than me. They made me feel bad. And so I said, well, me and my kids will go to your house for a cookout, but you'll have to come give us a ride. So they did that. I go to their house, and that was the first time I heard that they were Christians. I go to their house for the cookout, and they start sharing about Jesus with me. And I thought, oh, no. But you know what? It was too late. I already loved them because they already built the relationship. If they would have came into Pizza Hut and gave me a tract and tried to get me to come to church, I would have been I would have pitched it, honestly. I don't know you people. But they took interest in me. They loved me, I could tell. They're making sure that they tip me well. They got to know my kids, so I already loved them by the time they told me this. And they led me to Christ and completely changed my life. So they were all of those things. So those 6 things, think about which component you're the strongest and which one you need to improve. And then our next thing that we're going to be talking about is being yourself and impacting others, because we're all made so different. One of the things I really love are personality tests. We're not going to do a personality test, but I do have an evangelistic style questionnaire that's on, for those watching on video, that you can find that at Church of the Heartland Growth Track in my class, Outreach and Evangelism. You'll find the link to that. For you guys here, I have copies of this for you, but I'm going to go over some stuff there because there's 6, and we can be all 6 of them at times, or one may stick out more than others. But what I really love about this next teaching is that it shows us no matter what personality we have, God uses it to reach people. Sometimes we think only those bold, passionate people are the ones really reaching people, and that's not true. We'll go through different examples and different evangelistic styles, and we'll see that God uses those kind of people. He uses quiet people. He uses servant people. He uses all kinds of people, So it's one of the things that I love. So this session, this little part of the session is being yourself and impacting others. I want to talk about the diversity in the church. One of the most liberating themes in the New Testament is also one that is often overlooked, that God intentionally built diversity into the church. He didn't make us all look the same. We're all totally different, you know. 1 Corinthians 12:18 tells us that, but our bodies have many parts, and God has put each part just where he wants it. So he gave us different spiritual gifts, personalities, temperaments, and yes, different styles of evangelism. He gave us different ways of presenting the gospel. Jesus' followers didn't all communicate their faith in the same way, which is good news. There were a variety of approaches, each of them vitally important and each one relevant for today. Okay, so after you guys take this quiz, all of these styles will be mean a little bit more to you, but I'm going to go ahead and start with some of them. When you take this questionnaire, it's just going to tell you what your primary evangelism style is and how it describes you, okay? One caution that you need to watch out for, it will also tell you some things to watch out for if this is the style that you are, and it'll give you some ideas on how to develop that style. So there are 6 styles of evangelism, and I'm sure I won't get through all 6 of them in this session, but we'll go ahead and get started. We may get through 1 or 2 of them. Our first style of evangelism is, number 1, is the direct style. In the Bible, this would have been Peter, okay? And for those of you who know these guys, I always like to try to think of people that I know that are this style. This would be like Herb Hyatt and maybe Jim at times too, okay? Acts 2, on the day of Pentecost, Peter did a bold thing. You know, he stood up in front of thousands of people in Jerusalem and told them that they had killed the Messiah and they were in big trouble. That's bold. Like, that I could definitely see Pastor Herb doing that. I've been on mission trips with him before, that he is very bold. It's important to realize that what Peter did that day was not foreign to his personality. It's not like Peter was this quiet guy and all of a sudden God used him in this way. God used Peter in a way that God made Peter. You know, Peter was straightforward, all or nothing kind of person. It's how he always was. Remember in some of the stories that in order to get close to Jesus, he once jumped out of the boat, swam to shore. He was passionate, okay? He was bold. Another time he walked on water, and one time he even cut someone's ear off with a sword. So we're not talking about a passive, quiet guy. This was his personality, and God just used his personality, Peter's bold personality, in this place to do this, okay? That was the style that God needed for the situation in Acts 2. And the Holy Spirit powerfully used Peter's challenge to the crowd when he told them, repent and be baptized. And over 3,000 people came to Christ that day. It was very effective, okay? Do you realize that there are a lot of people in your world who won't come to Jesus until someone like Peter holds their feet to the fire? There's some people that's what they need. They need someone like that. Some people are just waiting for a Christian who won't beat around the bush, okay? Some of the characteristics are of this, and so that, I don't know if that's your style, but when you guys take this test, it'll kind of tell you. Some of the characteristics are they're confident, they're assertive, they're to the point. I thought I had some more papers that told me. Okay, I do, but they're not here. So we'll go to number 2, and I'll come back to that. Number 2 is the intellectual style. That was Paul. And I would say this is Heath. Heath fits this one very well. Acts 17, in this passage, Paul's talking to a group of philosophers. These people would not have responded well to Peter's approach, okay? This group of people, if Peter would have came there, they would not have repented and gotten saved, okay? That's why God sent Paul, who used the intellectual style, okay? He built a logical case to present the resurrected Christ. He even quoted their philosophers to make his point, okay? God used Paul's intellectual approach, and a number of those thinkers ended up putting their trust in Jesus. Again, what Paul did here fit Paul. That's just who Paul was. That's why what Heath does is easy for Heath. But this is also why we can't try to be something that we're not. And you know, there have been times, like for myself, that I've tried to be more like Jim or more like Herb or more like Heath, and I realized that I'm not going to get maximum impact by doing that. Like, I want just to be who God made me, and he's going to use me in a totally different way. But he's going to use every single one of us, okay? Paul was natural at presenting the gospel in a reasoned and logical way. This style has become more and more important as our society has become increasingly secular, which is why, Heath is an amazing teacher. He's very good at practically, logically bringing out the Bible, okay? So some of the characteristics of the people that have this style of evangelism, they're inquisitive, they're analytical, they're logical. I want to be this style, but I'm not, okay? I have been the next style, and a few of the styles fit me, but number 3 style is the testimonial style, and we see that with the blind man in John 9, a man who had been blind since birth, used to sit by the road and beg for food, and then Jesus comes along and heals him, and he can see for the first time in his life, okay? But before he had a chance to blink, he finds himself being questioned by religious leaders who oppose Jesus, okay? He didn't know all the answers to their question. He was just a blind man that he now can see. But what he did know, he told them clearly, okay, in verse 25, in John 9:25, where he says, look, I used to be blind, now I can see. It's pretty hard to argue with somebody's experience. You know, they were questioning him, they were upset with him, but it's pretty hard to argue with the guy who from birth has been blind, and now he can see. So another style is the testimonial style. It was powerful and hard to argue with then, and it's the same way today. All of us have a story to tell. And it may not seem as dramatic as the blind man's story was, but if Jesus has made a difference in your life, you've got a story to tell. Okay? There are a lot of people who live and work around you who need to hear your testimony. They might not respond well to a challenge like Peter would do, or an argument presenting the case in a logical way. That might not either, but a powerful account of someone's changed life would influence them powerfully. And because I'm more like this style, I'm more motivated by that too. I really didn't need anyone to give me all the history and the background, and like Heath is so good at that. Like he can make a case for Christ because he knows all of that stuff. And some people need that. They have so many doubts and they use their intelligence so much. But for me, honestly, like if a changed life was more meaningful to me. If I saw, and that's John and Donna, I met them and they're telling me we used to be drug addicts, we used to do this, and I'm thinking at the time, I'm a partier and a pot smoker and all this stuff, and if this Jesus they're talking about can change their life, maybe he can change my life too. So some people, that's why God can use all of us. I have a son that's more like Heath, that a testimony wouldn't even mean as much to him as a half an hour with Heath explaining, like, here's the facts, here's the history, this is why, and he wouldn't respond well to a Pastor Jim or Herb yelling at him, telling him, you crucified the Messiah either. So that's why God knows everybody needs different things, and he uses all of us. So some characteristics of the testimonial style: they're clear communicators, compelling storytellers, good listeners. And next session, I'll share a little bit more about some of these styles, but we're just getting an overview. Number 4 is the interpersonal style. This would be Matthew, a former tax collector, had only recently come to faith when he realized that his tax collecting coworkers also needed to know Jesus. Okay? So he decided to throw a banquet at his home, and he invited some of them with Jesus and the disciples. So he invited his crazy friends along with Jesus and his disciples. It was a party with a purpose, okay? People with that style tend to go deeper with people and are able to utilize the trust that they develop to influence Christ, okay? Person who loves to be around friends is what this type of person is. God can use this, Don't underestimate what might happen during a meal or when you invite people into your home for a small group. Matthew didn't confront them like Peter. He didn't intellectually challenge them like Paul. He relied on the relationships that he built with them. Okay, many people have never been reached until someone takes the time to build that kind of relationship with them. So some characteristics of this style are you're relationally warm, conversational, friendship-oriented. This is the type of person that can fill a van full of people to go somewhere. I have some of those. Well, I could actually be one of those too. But I have some of those at my church too that they just know how to rally a group together. They're like Matthew. Number 5 is the invitational style. The example is the Samaritan woman. Jesus broke all the social customs of his day to talk to this woman who was drawing water at the well because she mattered to him and to God. After starting a conversation with her, Jesus revealed that he was not just a prophet, but the promised Messiah. This woman immediately ran back to town and told her friends. She urged them to hurry and come to the well with her to hear what Jesus had to say. They accepted her invitation, and as a result of her efforts, some of them became followers of Christ. Like the Samaritan woman, some of us are especially able to get people interested in whatever we're involved in, okay? The characteristics of this are hospitable, relational, and persuasive. And then the last one is the serving style. It would be Tabitha in Acts 9:36. Tabitha was a woman who served others by doing good and helping the poor. One of the ways she did this was by making clothes for widows in her town. Her effects made quite an impact, okay? When she died, God sent Peter to pray over her, raise her from the dead, and put her back into service, okay? People who take this approach find it easy to serve others. They notice needs that other people don't see, and they find joy in meeting them, okay? Even when they don't get a lot of credit for it. This serving style, my husband, G, is definitely this style. Like, he just is good at seeing needs and meeting them, and he doesn't care. He doesn't want to be in the spotlight. He doesn't want attention for it. He just likes to serve people. Some people care for others in such an effective way that those being served can't help but look heavenward. They can't help but realize that there must be a God to motivate someone to make those kind of sacrifices. Okay? Those with the serving style are not serving people instead of sharing Christ. They are sharing Christ while they're serving, through their serving. Their selfless acts of kindness open up opportunities to speak about God as well. If this is your style, don't underestimate the spiritual influence it can have. You know, if it's your style, if this is your style, over time, many people are going to be reached, you know, because this style reaches a lot of really hurt, hardened people when people are serving them and loving them. So keep on serving and don't lose your confidence that it will make a spiritual difference. Okay, some of the characteristics of this style are they're other-centered, they work behind the scenes, and they're patient. What is my time like before I head into a new territory? Okay. All right, then I'm going to wrap this up just by saying a couple more thoughts. I already said this, but I want to repeat it again. God knew what he was doing when he made you, okay? He gave you your personality on purpose. Many times, like, I think that, especially people that are introverted and more shy, they think I'm just not good at evangelism. That's not true. Evangelism, I hope that from the first session that you see that it's not something we do. It's just who we are. He wants to use you in natural ways to reach other people. He wants to use you exactly how you are. You don't have to be like somebody else. If you're a quiet, shy person, he wants to use you. Because there's people that need quiet, shy people to present Jesus to them. God knew what he was doing when he put you in your circle of non-Christian friends. He knew what he was doing. You know, your friends best relate to people like you. That's why they're your friends. That means that you're probably in the best position and the best person to influence them. God knew what he was doing when he put you in your church. You know, I hope you feel encouraged. Isn't it a relief to know that we can be ourselves while being used by God to reach other people? It's a big relief to me, like someone who I've tried really hard to try to be more like Herb, and it's really hard when you have such great role models. But as awesome as all those guys are, I have my own way that God's going to use me, you know. So it's a relief to me to know that God, I don't have to make excuses for my personality. I'm definitely a more fiery, passionate, and it can go good or bad. When sometimes my passion is nice and sometimes it's not so nice, but God made me like that. I don't have to like put myself in a box and try to be something I'm not. We don't have to force ourselves into a mold that doesn't fit us. Instead, we can partner with others and work together with God's help to reach people that he's placed in our life, you know. So be yourself. Nobody fits perfectly into just one of these styles that we talked about. In fact, you're probably going to find opportunities to use all of them. And I have. Like, I'm not normally the bold person, but there have been times when I've been like Peter. So there, you know, you don't have to like even stick yourself in one of the styles. The most contagious Christians are those who have learned to work within the design that how God's made them. Okay? So Next week, we'll be talking a little bit more about this. I'll go a little more in depth with it, but we're also going to be talking about communicating the gospel, because we want, like our equation at the beginning, we want clear communication. So we want to be able to present it in a way. We want to be able to tell our story in a way that's really easy, you know. So we'll be doing that, telling your story, communicating God's message, and helping friends cross the line of faith. We'll be talking about some of those things. So that is it for tonight. I will see you guys next week.